Deep down in the Murray Costume Manor resides a entity that is so hauntingly sinister that it really makes you question what truly happened at the manor. Well, this entity is the Sleepy Moon creature, or well, robot we could call it. And it has been here for some time now as it begins to sing songs and hunt the player down as soon as they enter. What is this entity and why is it down here? Well, that's a good question, and let's just hop straight into the things that we know that could be this moon thing. Before getting into this video, this theory is very similar to Twisted Animatronic's theory on moon. So I'm going to credit his channel because I did use a little bit of what he said in certain parts. So yeah, huge credit to Twisted Animatronic for, I guess, some of the theory speculation part of the video. There's a report in the game if you go toward the logs, and this was done in the retailer's showroom Monday 8 AM. It goes, "Sean, I found out why they closed it down. There's something below us. I've trapped it behind the carousel for now, but I don't know how long that can hold it. I've programmed the monitors to give you the code. I gotta go. I'll mail you later." This gives us information that something is below us. Whatever that thing is, it's been trapped behind some sort of carousel, and this whole report was done before the moon thing, which if you look down in the basement is that massive head that fell, and it's the massive hole in the center of the building. There's another log that is called Night Shift, and it goes, hey, is anybody up there? I'm stuck down here. The elevator isn't working, and I'm getting really hungry. Is anyone getting this message? This intel does give us a little glimpse of perhaps someone was trapped in the depth of the basement, which is causing the moon creature to be alive. It is called the starving worker theory, and essentially, someone is down there, starves to death, or is eating whatever is down there, rats, who knows what else they're eating, and they're surviving by going insane and living inside the suit. This is definitely a possible theory, and this intel does somewhat go toward that idea. I personally think that this is a little far-fetched, but it is definitely something that could have happened. There's just one thing: before the massive event where that whole head fell and destroyed part of the manor, that Murray had no idea if anything was down in the basement. Why do I bring this up? Well, Murray is the one that runs this whole place, and he has had the factory long before, anyone's actually worked there. Obviously, he's the owner, but not only that, the factory was a hand-me-down from his dad, who originally owned the factory. Who knows what Murray's dad would have had built down here? We don't actually know much about it. Some of the earlier suits in the game can be, I guess, maybe the lion costumes and that sort of stuff. But if Murray states that there was nothing down in the basement, then we can kind of chalk that there wasn't anyone down here. Maybe the whole incident was something that wasn't seen by Murray, but I do think Murray would have had full control of the whole factory, as it's his building. He would know what's down there and if it needs to be removed. A possible theory is that the M2 animatronic, the mimic, could be locked down in the basement. This is due to, Edwin literally beating the mimic and causing that whole event where it becomes insane. And this could mean that after this happened, Edwin could have just chucked the mimic in the basement as punishment for, I guess, his own anger. This is plausible, and I do think the mimic was in the basement for a certain period of time. An interesting parallel is that if you look at the Tiger Rock area, this is actually located very close to where the basement is located. And these two areas are haunted by similar things, I would say. You have the Tiger Rock entity, who is most likely a ghost. We don't actually know if it's a ghost, but I assume there's something related to this and a entity. So perhaps Edwin would have chucked the mimic inside the basement, locked it up, and made sure that no one could go down there, as he would know the danger, or perhaps he would not want anyone going and retrieving the mimic for themselves. However, workers eventually started reporting the instances of there being something in the basement. So at this point, we know that it perhaps couldn't have been Moon, because Moon, the whole suit, wasn't down there until the whole thing collapsed. But we also know that the mimic could have been down there, as Edwin perhaps could have casted it out of pure anger, and for him not wanting anyone to see it. And the basement, and who's going down in the basement when the elevator doesn't even work? Again, workers had reported that something was in the basement, however no one knew what exactly it was. So this kind of part of the theory is all up to speculation. An interesting distinction to make between the moon entity and the mimic is that firstly, the mimic recycles majority of its voice lines, which is not seen with the moon creature. As you've heard, the mimic roughly says the same stuff, although possessing different animatronics. When it comes to the moon creature, it only says one thing, which is its lullaby. Another important distinction is that the voices between the mimic and the moon creature are very different. Obviously, the mimic does adapt to any single voice and body that it possesses, but this moon creature has a distinctly non-robotic voice, which is very apparent when we're talking about the mimic and the voices it mimics. Another important thing is that the M2 will say occasionally some giveaway lines. This is mainly seen when we go to the final place, the house on the hill, and you can hear how the mimic does say stuff that it, I guess, recycles. Now, there is some things that the moon does that is, I guess, similar to the mimic. I think the main thing is how heavy the moon creature's footsteps are. I mean, these footsteps do sound very heavy, as if a endoskeleton is controlling it.
Fred is baby weeping.
But I believe it's very important to note that this is a massive costume, and what is important to note that the costume does seem heavy, but I'm assuming that that's just how the costume is. So we can say, yes, the footsteps are very heavy, but I don't believe they're controlled by an endoskeleton, and we're going to go into why I don't believe it's the mimic. And the main thing is we already know that whatever was in the basement wasn't the moon before that massive moon mask fell into the basement. So it perhaps was the mimic before this event. However, I believe when that massive thing fell and destroyed part of the basement, the mimic escaped, went straight into the building, and something went inside the moon costume. The helper bots that are present in the showroom also do go toward kind of a evacuation procedure.
We're sad to announce that the Storytime showroom is currently closed pending mitigation of insurance claims.
That I assume was when the massive moon fell and obviously destroyed part of the basement and the main floor. During this collapse, it has been hinted through dialogue and text that people were injured during the evacuation procedure. Another injury that was, well, encountered was with Edwin. He destroyed the mimic. He took and broke the legs of the mimic and genuinely just dismantled it. However, in one of the dialogues in the game, in one of the audio things, we can hear how Edwin is pleading to the mimic to, well, help him because his legs are broken.
I can't move. I can't feel my legs. You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine. There are still a few kinks to work out. I'm sorry, M2. I lost my temper. I was always gonna fix you.
So the mimic, out of revenge, most likely broke Edwin's legs or was programmed to do what Edwin did to it, and then it perhaps would have just took apart Edwin, but I don't believe the mimic destroyed Edwin completely because, well, Edwin hadn't fully destroyed the mimic when it was being attacked by him. Now, this next part of the theory is pure speculation, and honestly, there's no solid proof to even solidify what I'm saying here. But if I'm going with how Edwin had used the mimic and put it into suits, we know that the mimic has a tendency to then put people into suits after its programming was completely just switched up due to Edwin's attack on it. I guess some proof of this is how we can see how some of the suits in the factory are stuffed with something. So what if the mimic entity took apart Edwin's legs and chucked him in a suit? And not just any suit, but the moon suit itself, because Edwin had previously discarded of the mimic in the basement, specifically where the moon thing is found. It's a little far-fetched, I know, but perhaps Edwin is the one possessing the moon costume. Now, there's a few things that could, I guess, contradict this statement. One in particular is the legs. Edwin's legs are broken and he had no way of healing them inside this suit. There's blueprints inside Edwin's house that show that the moon thing needs to have someone controlling the arms and the legs of the suit. So unless the legs don't need to be actually moved in and the suit has like a thing that can move them for Edwin, I don't really know if this can work, but who knows, maybe some remnant or some agony could have kept, I guess, Edwin alive. This was similar to Springtrap. I mean, until William Afton, no one had really known what remnant even was, but who knows, maybe Edwin was even ahead of his time in terms of research on remnant. And there's also another weird distinction is the voice actor that plays Edwin also plays the voice of the moon character. A little interesting fact, I thought, but honestly, the fate of the moon creature is such a interesting topic, and I'm not going to give it a solid answer because honestly, I don't know, but this is, I guess, just the best I can come up with I guess what the game's telling us, if that makes sense. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this cheeky little theory video that I cooked up. Honestly, something I don't do regularly, but I might start doing more often because, yeah, no, I actually had quite fun making this video. If you are brand new here and do enjoy the content, then please do consider subscribing to the channel. And again, huge credit to Twisted Animatronic, who again, I'm linking in the description, so check his video on this as well, as it is absolutely an amazing video. But anyways, until next time, take it easy and goodbye.